and welcome back to my channel if you're new here. My name is Michala and I make videos about different cozy hobbies, especially journaling, and today I wanted to talk about something a little different, which are my art journals. So I show my reading journal, I show my traveler's notebook where I have a diary and like a memory log, but these are all journals I use as an artist. And don't worry, I don't use them all at once. I'm not quite that journal obsessed, but I wanted to show you my favorite kinds, and I have a lot of variety, and I'll show you what are my current favorite types of journals. I pretty much have two favorites that I'll show you, but I wanted to go through different ones and show you what kind of papers they have, why I like them, and all coming from the perspective of I'm an abstract artist who likes mixed media. So I do a lot of heavier mediums like ink and watercolor and water-based things, as well as crayons and pencils and all that kind of stuff. So let's light my candle and I'll flip through my favorite journals with you. First, let's make a little space. So I thought I could start with the different types, generally speaking, meaning I have sketchbooks with thicker paper that I use more water-based mediums in and a lot of ink. And then I have this journal with handmade paper that I'll get to in a second and what I use that for. And then I have moleskin journals. So I think I'll start by showing you my moleskin journals and what I use those for. And then I'll show you my thicker paper journals. And if I keep saying journal instead of sketchbook, hopefully that doesn't bother you. I kind of mean the same thing. So here are my different moleskins, and again, some I don't use anymore. These ones are filled up, but I want to talk to you about why I like them. And as you can see, I have a lot of different sizes because I really like moleskin paper. And I'll start by showing you this little one. So these two are the moleskin Japanese album, and that means they are accordion style. So when you open it up, I don't decorate anything in these. Sometimes I should put dates in them, but some of these are a little bit older, so I'm just going to show you what I have. And as you can see, the pages are accordion style and pull out like this. And for whatever reason, I really enjoy this type of journal. I really like that the pages are connected. I like doing, as you can see, my abstract style a bit in these ones. I have a few different styles, of course, but I really like to start with with a black ink and a certain brush I have, and do these thick, bold brush stroke type of work. And then I like to come in with inks and watercolors. That's what the colored elements are. Some are watercolors, most are inks. And I have a little palette, and I'll dip my brush and then I'll add some different colors and strokes as I see fit. And then I will add even charcoal and pencil and pastel. So if you can see right there, that lighter stroke, and over here, that's charcoal. I have a lot of movement in these notebooks because of the accordion style pages. And what I would often do is lay out about 4 or 3 at least pages at a time, like right here you can see. And I did these all at once. I like working on a lot of smaller pieces of paper as an abstract artist to work on different compositions all at once, because by the time I get all my mediums out and I find a color palette I like, I often like to work in groups and then just keep the ones I like and do something creative with the ones I don't. But this notebook functions in a similar way. Instead of a bunch of little pieces of paper out, I just have them all connected. And then you can see here are some purple ones that I did, and then here are some black ones. And then at the end I have these orange ones. I will say, I bet you can use the back side of the paper, especially because a lot of my mediums did not leak through, but I just kind of like to keep it as it is. I might go back and put some more stuff on the back side. But yeah, I like these because as you can see, it doesn't really bleed through on this paper. Oh, and sorry, one thing I meant to say is all of these notebooks are the Moleskin Art series. So even the Japanese albums falls under the art series, meaning they all have the same paper. Moleskin has a few different kinds of paper. They're all somewhat similar, I would say. I mean, I haven't tried absolutely all of them, but these papers in the art series are a little bit thicker. They are 165 GSM paper and it's smooth. So it does not have much tooth to it at all. And I like the way that that makes the brush strokes appear on a lot of my different brushes. So this one, I started out with a landscape of sorts, still very abstract, as is a lot of my work. And then I have like one blank page and I went on to some other work, and you can see just how well the different mediums show up on this paper. And so while I do use a lot of ink, and this darker blue is something like wash, for example, I don't use much water. I will dip more into a palette with these, as opposed to my thicker papers. I will drop ink directly into a pool of water on my paper. But these Moleskine journals are not thick enough for that, so I don't put a lot of water directly onto the pages. And that kind of distinguishes my two different styles as an abstract artist. I have kind of what I consider dry, and then I have more wet on wet work, which I do on my thicker watercolor paper or on canvas, because those two materials can hold water a lot more. But here you can see just some of my work. So sometimes I will like a page on its own, like this one, and I might scan it and make a print of it or something. But sometimes I like them in collections and how the ink flows across the pages. Here are pages where I use some thicker mediums. This is white acrylic paint with ink in it. And I just really like how the papers in these journals are a little off-white. That's just something I've come to like the more I worked in different journals. Here's a page where I would consider it unsuccessful, but again, I'm showing you my sketchbooks. Not everything's going to be beautiful in them. Hopefully that was understood. But yeah, this is a page I consider kind of a mistake, quite messy. And then this is a page that I ended up liking a lot more, and I probably did them at the same time. So this is something more successful where the composition is better, and this is a little more messy, and my oranges kind of bled with the black and got a little muddy. So you can see that over there. And here's this piece. And I loved like the lighter, more watered down ink with the bolder ink on top. And yeah, these are just a style of journal that I really, really like. I would say this is definitely one of my favorites. The Moleskine art paper, specifically in the Japanese albums like this. So there are those, and they have a pocket in the back. If you were not aware, the Moleskine ones I think always have a pocket in the back. They're a little pricier, especially for these album ones, so that's something that keeps me from buying more of them. So sometimes I will just get the regular Moleskine, which is what these two are. If you're curious, this is 3.5 by 5.5, and these two are more standard. I'll put them below, but I think approximately 5.25 by 8.25 or something like that, you know, more standard size, a little bit closer to A5. But yeah, this one's not full. I still do different things in here. The first page is open to this bookmark with this moth I did with mixed media, and I was doing an art a day practice at this time. There'll be, you know, a lot of like pattern work I was messing around with. This is a very true, like, trying things out sketchbook, where I did different swatches in here on different days, trying to kind of decide what colors I like on this paper, as you can see. And then, as you saw, I have some more like illustration style of work that's more impressionistic as opposed to expressionistic. A lot of my stuff, as you can tell, is like this, where it's very expressive as opposed to capturing the impression of something. But I do like dabbling in all sorts of kinds of art. So there's that one, and the only difference is this is a navy blue cover as opposed to a black cover between the other ones, but the paper is the same. And then here's my big one. That's 8 by 11 or something like that. I'll link them all below. And then this journal I was very experimental with as well. Here's just a black pen that I really enjoyed, and I just did these freehand, like no tracing or anything. Nothing crazy, just a lot of experimenting and layering with papers, and I have some notes in here as well. This one was my favorite sketchbook for a while, and I took a lot of notes in here. So again, this pen style and just drawing fruit. They look like lemons, but I just made this fruit up. So it could be lemons, could be something else. This has charcoal, which you can see is getting on the other page. But yeah, this is one where I took a lot of notes about different things. and just tried out a lot of ideas. So I had this journal when I took my punch needle rug hooking class, and these are all little sketches of possible rug layouts. And I kind of found my own style that's a lot more geometric when it comes to sketching out possible rug hooking projects. Because rug hooking, you can't get as detailed. You can get pretty detailed, but I just wanted to block in different shapes. And then I have notes over here, maybe a song I was listening to. Again, ideas for like social media and stuff. This is colored pencil. Again, like a rug hooking sketch, but I decided to add color to it. More little sketches of possible rug designs. This has class notes from a different class over here, and one of my children was younger and scribbled on the bottom. And then this is like not a sketch I particularly like, but I think that's why I decided to swatch colors on it instead. Yeah, this one was nice for just how large it was and that I could try lots of different things. Here are more notes from different courses I took, and then eventually I was taking so many notes on courses that I got a different sketchbook for that. Here is something that I started on and then my kids overtook, but they used these really pretty colors that I actually like a lot. So kind of a collaborative page. Then here it is in black, and I kind of like the mirrored, I think it's actually black charcoal, or yeah, it looks like charcoal to me. But anyway, it kind of leaves the impression over here. I could spray fix it, but at the time, lots of different times, I either had small children around or I was pregnant and I don't want to spray fixative in those moments. So just a lot of things not spray fixed. These are oil pastels I was trying out in a similar style. So lots of trying things out. These I had little pieces taped in here, but I guess I took those out. Maybe I never taped them down. I just placed them in here and they fell out. But I did color swatches for different series I was thinking of. These are in ink, and these swatches are my other mediums, mostly chalk pastel. Here's a page where you can see that I used thicker watercolor paper to try something out, and I just taped it in here, and same with my swatches. This ink would look very different on this paper, so I wanted to test out specifically this watercolor paper I wanted to do my collection on, because that's what I had and what I wanted to color swatch, but I wanted to capture it in this same sketchbook. So I just cut them out and put them in here. Here's something very colorful, just again, playing with my oil pastels and playing with color. Here's a watercolor magnolia with pencil that I don't particularly like, but there's that. And then here are some abstract compositions I was playing with, more just like large shapes where I wanted to put them. And then some more magnolias you could see I was in a big phase of, ornament designs, that kind of thing. But yeah, this one is very diverse. I even took an illustration course for a children's book and started messing around in here for that concept. But yeah, so I love the moleskin ones for trying out a lot of different things, mixed media wise. And I love the albums especially. The albums are really fun with the accordion style. If you do abstract art, I would recommend. But now I will move on to my purely abstract and thicker papers. So I'm going to put this one with handmade paper aside for a second and show you these two. This one I got off Amazon, and it's the Arteza watercolor journal that's like 8.25 by 8.25. It's 110 pound paper and 230 GSM, so it can hold more inks and water. So a lot of these pages I put water down and dropped ink into the water, because that's kind of the other style of abstract I really like exploring. Let me find a good example. Here's a good example where I painted with my brush just water, like clear water, and then I dropped ink with a dropper into the water and just essentially watched how it moved and then interacted with it a bit and brushed it around some more. And that practice I find very meditative, kind of like my Japanese album practice, going across the pages. Different things like that are very meditative to me, and that's a big part of my process as an artist. I find I come back to art if I make a practice of just meditating and enjoying the colors combining and watching how they spread in water. These inks I was using were actually fountain pen inks. Expensive, I know, I don't necessarily recommend that, but the green ink got a little more brown as the purple went into it, but then where they met, this interaction happened where there was this bright blue. And I just love exploring little things like that, little like kind of magic moments. So yeah, a lot of these pages I do not consider final pieces at all, but they're very good for helping me figure out how mediums sit on the paper and what colors go well together. So I do a lot of like color exploration in this type of journal, and I have purchased this same journal since. So this is not necessarily my current one, but one I'm showing to represent that I like this specific journal. So these are all older pieces, but this is one where I liked the composition more. Here's one where I played with black and purple versus a slightly different purple and this brown, and you can see this really cool texture over here. But yeah, I really like the details in abstract art, and so that's what I really explore. This one, my blue ink had a yellow, it's actually a black that comes out more blue, this ink, but then the edges had this like yellow cast that I thought was really interesting. And you can see I kind of played around with kind of more nature or floral elements, but still very abstract. I like this spread a lot. There's a lot of fun movement across the pages. I will show you that this is Tombow pen in the light blue. This is chalk pastel in the brown. And then you can see some pencil marks. So I do a lot of mixed media in here, and all of these are inks, all of the more obviously watery looking things. This is a mixture of watercolor and ink. The more green is ink, and the blue is actually a Payne's Gray watercolor paint. There's a Payne's Gray by Winsor & Newton that comes out more blue that I like a lot. And so I was playing around with different color combos. This is a color combo of ink I like a lot, and on this paper it looked quite different than my loose watercolor paper, so I was kind of playing around with that. This one has some fun different elements and color combos. I love to keep these ones really free and loose. I just come in here to play and to have fun and keep it low stakes so that I experiment more, so I come up with really fun things that I can then take and use on a more like serious abstract piece, if that makes sense. So like I have more confidence in my color combinations or how I'm going to do my abstract leaves or flowers or things. And a lot of that comes from just playing in this sketchbook. I think it's really important to have a space to just play. And these sketchbooks are not too expensive. The only thing is the colors of my inks do come out pretty significantly different on this paper versus the watercolor paper I tend to use for final pieces. And this paper is cold press. Sorry if I didn't say that. I will try to leave everything below. But honestly, it kind of feels more like hot press paper to me. That's really neither here nor there. The paper says, you know, what it says in the description, but it is kind of less toothy, more smooth, and kind of the soft feel to it. But I really like it, and again, not too expensive, so I really like it for playing around with and coming up with really cool color combinations, textures, brush strokes, mark making, that kind of thing. And then this last page I even experimented with dyes, pigment dyes, which are very messy, and I kind of labeled which colors were which. So this is a reference for me. Even though it doesn't look like a color swatch, it looks kind of like a big old experiment, I use it as color swatches. So this journal I like a lot for experimenting, but seeing what the results would look like on thicker paper. But my favorite mixed media journal is this one. I will still buy the other one I showed you because, like I said, it's cheaper. It's pretty affordable. It comes in a pack of 2. I don't remember the price it was when I bought it last. I feel like prices change on Amazon sometimes, but I will link it below because I thought it was very affordable for 2 notebooks with thicker paper. This one is a little more expensive, but it's probably my favorite, and it's by Stillman and Byrne, and it's cold press watercolor paper. The green sketchbooks by them are the Delta series, and it's extra heavyweight ivory 270 GSM. So I'm not sure what that is in pounds, but most papers at least show GSM. It's a little more accurate. And yes, it holds up to a lot of different mediums and is just really nice. And also the ivory paper, which I prefer. These are gouaches and inks, both acrylic based. You can see just little mixed media things I did in here. These were just really dark colors. Again, I wouldn't consider these pages successful, but just color combos I was thinking about. This is more like of a landscape, and this is just washi tape holding that down. But I would say playing in sketchbooks regularly really does make me a better artist, even with abstract work. I don't know if you guys are abstract art appreciators or not. I definitely have a lot of people that say, what is it, or what is it supposed to be? But I have come to have a great appreciation for abstract art ever since, at least since college, where I took a lot of art history classes and learned more about it. But more importantly, abstract art to me is a place I can follow my intuition and my spirit a bit more than my head. It's a bit more like letting my heart paint rather than my head, although there is a lot of skill and composition and color theory and mark making that goes into abstract art. I do just love to kind of follow my intuition, and that's easier to do in sketchbooks or when working on a lot of small pieces of paper at a time, which is the other thing I do that's not a sketchbook, is I just work on loose leaf paper a lot for my abstract process. Watercolor paper, I'll cut it up into small pieces and work on a bunch at a time. It's just really good for getting different compositions. And then I'll bring a final piece onto a larger piece of paper or maybe onto canvas and use my little sketchbook pages or loose leaf pages as reference. But yeah, these are some pages I thought were really fun. These inks are spread out with a wedge, which is actually like, you can use it to frost a cake, but I have a tool called a wedge that I smooth out my inks sometimes. So I'll drop them straight onto the paper and then drag my wedge over it to make different shapes and things. This is a page where I used water and then dropped ink into it. You can kind of start to tell when I did that because it has a lot of movement and like you can see the ink expand. My light is changing, and so I hope the colors are looking okay, but this is really more about just my sketchbooks in general, not so much my art and my art style, although I do, enjoy sharing that with you guys. This one, the other side bled through a little bit, so there is an ink or two I have that will bleed through. This, I did something more landscapey over here, and then this one, I believe I spilled extra water on it, so it kind of lost what I was trying to do. So I did like a landscape over here. I liked these color combos a lot, but again, one of the inks from the other side kind of bled through. It's a black I have that I showed earlier that has a lot of blue undertones to it. But these are shapes that I just thought were really fun. I really like these pieces, and they kind of led to a whole collection I did. Maybe not directly, but they definitely inspired a collection I did last year. Here's one that has kind of some natural or organic elements painted in there, but the rest is quite obscure. The red and blues and blacks I was really enjoying. I did these more sketchy, like sketch kind of shapes with the ink dropper. The ink dropper itself, has like a tip on it, and I just scratched the ink on here. Here's this page and this one. But yeah, and then in the back of this journal, I have these loose canvas sketches I did, and that is kind of unrelated to the sketchbook itself, but they were just ones I liked that I wanted to bring with me while I sketched other things in here, so I clipped them in the back. So these are on canvas that I just cut out and used similar to a sketchbook, but they're just loose, where I just sketched and tried different colors. This is a piece of watercolor paper like I use normally that can hold up to a lot of different mediums. Here's another little sketch. It was kind of like an abstract and a landscape combo. I liked this one a lot. And then I just have this one back here. So this is really probably my favorite sketchbook for thicker and more watery mediums, and I would definitely recommend it. Again, I will leave everything linked below, but this is the Stillman and Byrne Delta series. And then lastly, I wanted to show you this journal, which is really beautiful. I was gifted it, so I don't know where it's from. It might just be from like a Barnes & Noble type of thing, but it's really nice and has like leather cover and just a wraparound strap. And I was hoping it would really work for thick mediums, but something about handmade paper or paper pressed in this nature. The truth is I don't know if it's like handmade or if it's from like a larger company, but it has a lot of inconsistencies in it, which adds to the beauty of it as paper, but it is hard to use as a sketchbook, especially with more watery things. And the texture is quite liney, not really porous and textured like watercolor paper, but more like lines in it. And so that can be hard to use like I'm used to. So you can see some watercolor snippets, and I also did some like poems and writing in here, and I taped in vision boards that were inspiring collections of abstract art because I still wanted to use this journal even though the paper was not my favorite. So I'll just show you how I use it even when the paper is not something that particularly works for my art. I do still think this is a really nice journal and I'm still having fun with it. Here are color swatches that I did online, but I pulled the colors from my Pinterest board collections of images, and then I figured I would get my watercolor paper and test my inks to get similar colors, but with my inks. Here are some sketched layouts with notes about what I like about them, how much I want to render things or how much I want to leave abstract. And then when I couldn't use my inks on the paper as well, I just played with some markers, pens, pencils, and crayons. And these two colored things are actually a washi tape and a sticky note. So just playing around with whatever I had. Here's me trying ink again, but it absorbed into the page right away and I couldn't move it very much at all. I have a poem and another piece over here. Still trying out this type of paper. I liked this a lot when I overlaid some other papers. This is just a scrap piece of brown paper from something random, and I continued the shapes onto it and I liked that a lot. So I did it again over here. Here's something I was playing around with, a clear sticky note and just adding the ripple water texture on top. Just a lot of experimenting. I love having lots of sketchbooks. Again, maybe not all of these active at one time, but a few different ones so I can let my creativity flow and not be perfectionistic and not have to make every page look good. I do not function that way at all. I wish I did, but I don't. I need space to get my anxiety out, get my worries out or whatever, get my thoughts out. Here's a taped in note from my son. He wrote me this and I thought it was really sweet, so I taped it in here and I can still fold it out. And then here's a brain dump I did, and I started doing that more, stream of consciousness writing, and then little poems and things. And then here are some styles with a little bit of watercolor or ink that I was getting to work a little better on this paper, which is just dipping my brush into the ink and using a little bit with not much water. Hope that makes sense. Here's me writing some more. Here are some ripped up pieces of something I did on Arch's paper. I had a scrap of Arch's paper, which is really nice paper, and this was just a piece of a painting, and then I ripped them up and layered them in here because I didn't want to waste that nice paper. And I thought I could maybe learn something from this, and then I just took a note that this is what these colors look like on Arch's paper. Here's another composition of ripped papers, and I might come in and add stuff to it. That's another thing I like about this sketchbook, is it's really a work in progress and there are no rules. So I could come in here and add another element, and before you know it, I feel inspired to do like a collage series or something. More writings, and then something I did a little more recently was put in some photos because I wasn't really inspired to paint anything in particular, but these photos I took of orchids were really on my mind and I really loved the colors in them. So I printed them off on label paper and put them in here along with a color palette that I pulled from them and different combinations of the color palette. And I kind of just put them in here again to use this journal and also to just expand my process, right? To sometimes just focus on my inspiration and what's inspiring me and give it some space in my journal. And then here are two color, essentially these are just me trying out these color combinations together. But yeah, those are my journals and sketchbooks and how I use them. I would say my perfect combination is this one with handmade paper for writing and for vision boards and just to stay inspired. My Moleskine Japanese album for painting sketches that really flow into one another and for the smooth paper. And then for textured paper, I really like this Stillman and Burn thick 270 GSM paper. One last thing I wanted to show is just this sketchbook I picked up a long time ago at an art supply shop, where it has this brown craft paper, which I thought was really different, and I used it for an illustration class where I was trying out different illustrations. I was much more new to characters and am new to character type illustration in general. I've drawn more realistic faces before, but I'm not super familiar with characters, so that's something I was working on in here. And this is a journal that I would say I've kept for a long time and is really more like project based. Like, I don't just fill it up, I kind of wait until I want to work on this specific style of illustration and drawing things more than painting particularly, I would say. So this paper is nothing special. It feels pretty thin. I'll leave information about it below if I can, but I thought this would be a place to do, like I said, more drawing and then also maybe rug hooking ideas. So that's what I do in here now. These ones I added gouache, but otherwise I keep it pretty much pencils and crayons in here. And yeah, I just thought I would flip through this one really quickly and show you all my different journals and sketchbooks. If you have any questions or I missed anything, please let me know, comment and let me know what kind of sketchbooks you like using if you're an artist, or even if you're not. I love, as you can tell, journals and sketchbooks. I've asked for different sketchbooks probably every Christmas or birthday since I was very little. So I just love collecting them and filling them up and trying different art styles. But now that I've used so many, I definitely have my favorites. So I just wanted to share with you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.